Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show, a series of organic discussions between hosts David Chavez and a variety of notable business leaders centered around their most significant failures and how they handled those challenges, so listeners can learn from their most teachable moments and apply the lessons to their organizations. Now, here's your host, David Chavez.
Hey everyone, this is David Chavez. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show, and we are here with Ananth Ganesan, and he is with Blue Chip Maintenance, and he is going to be talking with us in a little bit. But before we go to him, let's talk a little bit about some of the webinars we have coming up on this Thursday. My partner, Kane Pekovic, is doing a little bit of precursor to her full-day event on November the 9th in Phoenix. And is it accountability frustrating you? Have better meetings. And she's going to talk a little bit about accountability and meetings. So that's this Thursday from 1 to 2 Central Time, and that's Central Time. So it'd be 11 to noon Pacific, and of course 2 to 3 on the East Coast. All right, well, let's jump in and talk to Ani just a little bit. And Ani, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company? We like to start off with knowing a little bit about your company and what it does, Blue Chip Maintenance.
Sure. So Blue Chip Maintenance, we are a full service maintenance provider. So think plumbing, HVAC, those sorts of things in the Sun Belt region. And we specifically work with single family rental home providers or REITs, so real estate investment trusts and property management groups that manage those properties. We have about 100 clients.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, what do you do in those? What do you do for them? Just go into a little bit of the services you do.
Yeah, so HVAC, plumbing, we do a lot of the build back work. One of the benefits for these companies and why we work specifically with them is our programs are really set up for them. So think about when a typical work order request comes in. If you're a resident renter in a home and your plumbing, you have a leak, right? They send the plumber out. The plumber hopefully can fix the leak, but now there's still a wall that's broken open, and now they've got to create a new work order on that other end to have the build back person or the person come and do the drywall. And now that resident is displaced for a few days. It's a lot more friction. So what we do is try to eliminate that friction. That maintenance coordinator for that company only has to create one work order. They send it to Blue Chip. We go do the plumbing, knock that out of the ballpark. We're licensed in all those states that we operate in. And then we actually do the build back work as well too. So it, makes it better for the resident, the property management group, saves a lot of time and a lot of money. And obviously we offer them better pricing in turn for volume as well too. So those are some of the benefits.
Okay, very, very good. So like, I think that what you're saying is you make it easy for these property managers or these REITs, because they can just make one phone call and they don't have to call 2 different companies, one for the drywall, one for the plumbing. They could just call you and you'll take care of the whole thing.
Exactly.
And do it all in one visit too. So me as the resident, I'm not having to deal with taking off work for you to be there the first time, then taking off again a few days later.
Exactly. So
okay, very good. So that increases efficiency and everything as far as everybody involved goes, really.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing that we really focus on as well too is the service side of things, right? I think in the maintenance world, in the service world, plumbers, they might go to school for plumbing, right? But they don't, sometimes there's the soft skills that are missing, but they are really great at that once they learn it, right? It's not something that they learn in plumbing school or when they're going to go get their license. And so that's something that we really focus on because we work for the most part with occupied homes. So we aren't doing turns. That was another thing that we learned very, very early on is do not do too much too soon. Even though clients will want you to do everything under the sun, especially when you start doing a good job for them, we really learned to stick to your guns and, grow the right way, right? Grow into trades the right way.
Yeah. And how did we meet? Tell everybody how we met, because we just met not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you did an unbelievable job for our Vistage group, and I actually had a couple of my staff members in that workshop, and we got tons of value from that. And I felt like we had a really great connection in that workshop. It was kind of a smaller workshop, which I particularly enjoyed because we got to ask lots of questions and be engaged. And yeah, so I met you learning, learning, and
Yeah.
continuing to grow my craft.
Yeah, I love how you said that too, because sometimes it's funny when I speak to a group, Vistage or whatever it might be, EO or whatever it is that I'm speaking to. Sometimes I end up with a small group, like 5, 10 people, right? Which has sort of happened with your group. And we have better conversations just all the way around. And we can really get into the meat of some of the particulars of your company. And so that's why I invited you on this show, is because I found what you have done pretty amazing. And what we do on the Strategy Sherpa show, just to let you, you already know this, but we talk about things we've done wrong, right? So not everything, because I think that there's tons of these shows out there telling everybody how great entrepreneurs are. But we make a lot of mistakes to do those things really well. And everybody always forgets the mistakes. And then I think what happens to entrepreneurs, even as they're scaling, they judge themselves for the mistakes they make, right? And what we're trying to do is say, hey, don't judge, just fix. And what we do is we talk a little bit about the mistake, and then we talk a little bit through how you resolve this issue. So let's start this off. And why don't you share with everyone a little bit around the circumstances and what happened? What was your mistake?
Well, what I can say, by the way, just about that group, I've been in that Vistage group for a little bit over 5 years, almost six, and actually it might be over 6 years now. And that was one of our top 5 workshops. So, you did a fantastic job. But as far as mistakes, I am the king of mistakes. So I'm excited to talk about some of this stuff, and hopefully the America listening will get some value. The environment.
Yeah. So
everybody remembers COVID, and 2020, I was actually getting back from India. We were talking earlier today before the show about traveling, and that was the last big trip that I got to take, other than Mexico and whatnot. But I was just getting back from India, and, this pandemic, you start hearing this coronavirus, and, it was very weird at the time. And then all of a sudden, everything shuts down. And I have to be honest, I was scared shitless. I didn't know what was going to happen to our business, what was happening in the world.
You and me both.
Yeah, it was a super scary time. And we were thinking, man, I was just getting back from this trip. I finally got a chance to take a month off where I felt comfortable enough with our business where I could take a month off and detach and be with my mom's side of the family in India, and things were great. And then I come back and this just blows up. Many of my friends in Vistage groups, and I'm also a member of CEO Council here locally, Tampa, we're seeing layoffs and all kinds of things happening. We found a way to manage through 2020, and we felt pretty good about that. We still found a way to be profitable. We were considered an essential worker, so we were able to make it through that period. And fortunately, we didn't have to cut people. And, that was kind of a badge of honor, right? I remember going to our Vistage meetings and CEO Council groups, and we give our updates, and I was feeling pretty good about things. So 2021 sets in, and we kind of got through the heaviness, at least at that time for business of COVID. There was still some crazy things happening, material pricing, all over the place, and lumber and whatnot. But 2021 sets in, and we were feeling good about 2020, surviving. We got disengaged. And I think you talked about this in your workshop. Sometimes you take those growth patterns, but it's never just a straight line up. You might take a dip and you get complacent, or that dip happens from complacency. Well, this happened for us. Matt, my business partner, and myself were maybe coming to the office a couple days a week. We, took our foot off the gas, feeling good about things. And we ended up having our worst half of the year in 2021 after we thought we had survived everything. That first half of 2021.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So the first half 2021, you were so what you were talking about a little bit is when I speak about strategy and business, is one of the things is we sometimes hit this valley of death, and the valley of death is really caused by two primary drivers that I see, complacency being one of them, right? We just and I always use the first sentence in the Good to Great book to really emphasize this. And the first sentence is, the enemy of great is good. And so we start to take our foot off the gas a little bit, because I'm taking home good money right now. Everything's going well. My people are staying. I can come in a couple of days a week. Life is great, right?
That was exactly what happened. Yeah.
Right. And so we take our eye off the ball a little bit. And why don't you share what happened when you took your eye off the ball?
So here's what happened. Everything felt like it was missing 10 to 15%. And that 10 to 15% is huge in business, right? That makes or breaks you in many cases. That first half of the year, we ended up being at, I won't say the numbers, but it was a pretty big loss. We were definitely in the red. Team meeting attendance was low. Culture was low. We felt like even though we weren't taking as much work, we were still behind with things. Everything was off in our business. Our retention was low. We were starting to lose some of our best people. And that was where Matt and I got re-engaged immediately. At that point, I wish that we had done it sooner, but you also talked about this in your workshop. Sometimes you don't see the results until a month or two later. And sometimes that's a month or two too long. So that happened.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is you guys took your focus off a little bit. Then you started having all these issues, even during the COVID time, with like employee morale. I think everybody's brain was affected a little bit through the COVID shutdown and everything. So you started to experience what a lot of business owners experienced out there, that the lack of motivation in people, you losing some of your best people, maybe for a few dollars more over somewhere else. And so you start asking yourselves, hey, if we were doing a better job on our culture, we were doing some other things, we might not be losing all these people. And I think the biggest indication is like the loss of the money, right? That you started having financial losses that were really impacting you.
Which we shouldn't have waited for that. Yes, 100%, but financial losses are what drove it, but we could have seen it a lot sooner, which was one of the lessons that we learned. Also, we brought people back into the office. That was huge for us.
Yeah. Just getting the culture back in line, right? So having everybody come in, being together, seeing each other, things like that. Yep.
100%.
All right. Well, let's just leave it right there, because we're getting ready to go into a break, and I don't want to get into the whole conversation about like some of the circumstances around the decision you made. But I just want to remind everybody, at Assured Strategy, we have webinars, and you can go to webinars. We have live events. Warren and I are doing a live scaling up workshop in Dallas in December, and that's a full day. So that's like about 2.5 times what we did with you, Ani. And we'll be back in just a few moments, and we will get with Ani, and he'll tell us a little bit about the circumstances of what happened, and then how they really resolved this issue, because this issue could have been the death of the company. Sounds like
we were feeling that way.
So
to be honest.
Yeah. So we'll be right back after these messages, and thank you for tuning in to Strategy Sherpa Show.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey, everyone. This is David Chavez. We are back with Ani, and we are going to talk a little bit about his issue that he had. So during COVID, He started falling off a little bit in his company. The morale started going down. They had taken their foot a little bit off the gas. And so why don't you explain to us the circumstances which led you to take your foot off the gas and, relax a little bit more than you probably should have been?
Well, we, were profitable, making money. We had the same leadership in place. We felt confident with them. We, like I said, we managed through COVID, and we felt like that was a major win. We survived without any layoffs. That was a huge badge of honor that we talked about often. I think 2021, we just thought things were going to be easier. We thought, how could it get more difficult than 2020, what we just went through? If we made it through that, we can do anything. And, rather than, being engaged at that point, I think we just got comfortable. We got comfortable, and, good is the enemy of great, as you said earlier. And, that didn't line up with what our actual goals were. And as, we had some time go, man, the finances were just starting to get that, were killing us. So that made us realize, hey, this can't keep on happening.
Yeah. So you guys, so you had, so the issue really is that you got through COVID in 2020 fairly well, which stressed you out when COVID came in. But then after about 6 months, you're probably feeling good about everything and everything's back on track, right? And so that caused you to take your foot off the gas a little bit, and because your stress is diminished, you're not in that fear zone anymore. And you're sitting there going, okay, everything's going good. We should be fine now. And then what are some of the issues that started to creep up? Like, what was for the first thing where you started to know that there was probably some complacency going on?
Well, so the first things that we started to notice were meeting attendance was low. So we work in many different states, and we would typically have about, 80 to 100 technicians on these phone calls for these meetings. And, it started getting into the 50s, 60s, 65 range, again, missing that 10, 20%. So that was the first thing. But then we also started seeing our margins were eroding, right? And that was the big one, right? We were meeting with our financial person, and we started seeing this margin erosion, and it was just a slow creep, a couple points, and eventually it got very, very painful. That was the big one, was the margin erosion, and we were driving work still. That's so between 2020 and 2021. 2020, I think if I remember correctly, was like a $6 million year. No, I'm sorry, 2020, we went from 6 to 7. So we still grew like $1 million, profitable. And that next year we were still growing in sales, but the finances were not reflective. Our bank account was not reflective. It was going backwards. We were just getting very sloppy, and estimating was not the coaching of that, was not happening at the same rate as it was before. Also, when you get bigger too, as a company, things can get more messy, and that's where your controls have to be a lot better.
Yeah. So you got a little sloppy. And sloppiness comes from, you say sloppiness, I call it probably a little bit of process erosion. As you're growing and growing and growing and getting larger and larger, the same processes that worked with a smaller group of people probably don't work with the larger group that you brought on. Training may slip a little bit, right? We get a little lackadaisical with training because of COVID and everything. Is that some of the things you were noticing too?
100%. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I also think some of our monitoring, you start to tell yourself, funny things during that period, but when you get re-engaged, you just realize, hey, there's no substitute for hard work, right? And I think that it stemmed from the top, and that was really, it also stemmed from Matt and I. I talked to Matt about this before, my business partner. One of the best decisions I ever made was picking the right partner, right? And that was a great decision that I made. But when talking about, this with Matt, we both just got complacent and thought, man, things are good. And then just all of a sudden getting chipped.
Yeah. And, you know, I think this was how you're describing this and what you're saying right now, for the listeners out there, this is what I think makes really good business people when they're able to sit back and talk about some of these issues that they had in the way that you're talking about it, because it almost sounds very positive that this mistake happened. So, you know, this mistake happened, you're stressed out, you're losing money like crazy, you're going, holy cow, what's going on? If you're like me, you know, you don't have wealthy parents or anybody that can write you a check for 3 million and save you. So you're having to, you and Matt are having to deal with this issue, right? Like face to face, you have to deal with this issue. And your margins are eroding. You guys probably were in a lot of fear. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, you have no idea, you know, and it makes it very, very difficult during that period, just like a marriage. You know, Matt and I, not all of our conversations were great at that point because we were, you know, things are flying and, you know, yeah, it's tough. But like I said, you know, thankful that I had a great partner and, you know, we were able to get through that. But yeah, it was a very, very tough time. And we were in question of the business or what we were going to do or what we were going to have to do. Yeah.
So tell us some of the specifics, like what did you do about the training issue? Like, let's take that. Let's take these things one at a time. How did you deal with the training issue? Because you probably had to do something first, even before you dealt with the training, is my guess.
100%. So the first thing that we had to do is get re-engaged with our leadership team, right? And, you know, so our director of project management, we had a conversation. He was in charge of conference calls, also estimating the training process for the project managers. And he did a fantastic job from that point on in taking ownership, getting engaged and saying, hey, I'm going to get these margins back up. I'm going to drive this team meeting attendance. So let's talk about the margins first. You know, one of the things that he did was update, you know, all our manuals. Sometimes as you get bigger, you don't update things the way that you should, and you've still got old framework that doesn't work anymore, right? And that is the training tools, which don't end up being a training tool because then your people are saying, oh, don't look at this, right? Oh, that's in there, but yeah, it's really this way. And so he went back and revamped that and said, hey, we are going to get engaged. Again, no substitute for hard work. And I think Peyton Manning said it best, right? You know, most important thing, don't make sloppy passes, right? He was making sloppy passes with the training, but he took ownership of that and said, hey, I'm going to get in and I'm going to make these guys unbelievable at estimates. We are going to get that detail back up and we're going to get that margin back up. And that was one of the biggest keys. Also, we made adjustments with the pricing as well, too. It wasn't just making sure that the estimates were done the right way so that we got the approvals, but it was also that our pricing was off because materials were fluctuating at such a rapid rate because we were having problems with getting lumber from places. And, you know, man, it was nuts if you remember that period, right? So we had to adjust the pricing pretty much on a, you know, month to 2 month basis. It was something that we were constantly looking at after that first half because we had never had to really do that prior to that period. Things did not fluctuate as much as they were at that time. So we were adjusting our pricing basically every couple months, or at least looking at it and making sure that, hey, if things were going up or down, we were adjusting for the better or worse to make sure that we were making the money that we needed to make so that it was a win all the way around.
Yeah, I had a framer in Vero Beach, Florida, and he did all the framing work and built trusses too, and had a truss manufacturing facility. And I remember talking to him one day during this time, and I said, "Hey, where are you going?" He goes, "Hey, I've been in business for 30 years. I'm going to the bank to get my credit increased because lumber has tripled in price. I no longer have the same credit line that I used to have. I can't even buy the lumber I need right now." And I was just going, and he said, it's just so crazy. So that was a crazy time. So you guys really focused in on the margins, getting the estimates correct, or taking care of the fluctuation in supply prices, right? Trying to deal with that. Getting the training back in order and matching the training up with the way things are actually being done. So the current processes, getting the processes up to date and then getting them trained again. So your partner spent a lot of time on that training. Both of you did, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what I'm hearing from you? And what happened when you started getting back to the fundamentals of your business for the size that you are? What happened?
So that was really the start of it. Then we started seeing the results go back up, and then, more engagement. And it's funny, once we got re-engaged, that was kind of the first tipping point. The other keys that we really focused on were meeting attendance. And that was meetings all the way around. We started looking at our business, and meetings become very, very important, right? They can be great for your business, or they can actually take away from your business. If you run meetings that don't provide value, or people are not getting things out of them, and it becomes more of a waste of time, it becomes a time vampire, right? So we got really focused on delivering on any event or any phone call or any meeting that we were running. Not only did we want to have attendance and track that, but we wanted to make sure that people were getting value. So one of the things that we started doing was like asking for feedback, rating meetings. And I think that's part of some of the things that you talk about as well too, right? You want to make sure that your people are getting the goods.
Right. Well, communication is so important. I think it may even come up when I was speaking to your group. Like communication, we're not even we don't even talk about communication problems in our own company, because communication problems are 80% of the problems in business. Like, what specifically about communication is broken right now? And so, like, if you're not using your meetings to disseminate critical information people really need to do their job better, you're sort of wasting their time in these meetings, right? And so every once in a while, we got to go clean up, because we start to get lackadaisical even with meetings, sort of like the same way you described at the beginning as that. And that's what you're saying. You were starting to clean up some of this stuff and really get feedback on, hey, are you getting the information you need to really do a better job today?
Yep. And, we immediately started to see that 5 to 10% creep back up. And also the business, even though it takes more work on the front end to do all that stuff, right? On the back end, it makes things so much more enjoyable and so much easier, and that was the exciting part of that, is that once we started doing that, things just started to fall into place, right?
Yeah. So everything started coming together for you guys. So you started paying attention to the margins. The margins started coming back. And what, we'll have to jump on this on the other side, because what's that?
Oh, when you bring that up, I didn't mean to cut you off. A fear that we had, though, of raising the prices at that time, we weren't taking the work. We were worried that if we raised our prices at that time, that we would take less work and that would be more of a hit. But the crazy thing was that we raised our prices and we ended up taking more work. So that was something funny.
Yeah. And I want to talk with you right after the break about that, because we got to go to a break right now. This is a Strategy Sherpa show. And we have Ani, I want to say your last name, Ganesan, with us. And he is the owner of Blue Chip Maintenance out of Tampa, Florida, and he services all over the Southeast. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back and talk to him a little bit about fear.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
All right, everybody, we're back with Ani Ganesan. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I say it correctly, because I don't want to abuse your name. But hey, I just wanted to remind everybody, on November the 9th, we have a live workshop in Phoenix about accountability. Accountability is really critical right now, as the world is shifting a little bit, as we all know, with some of the situations that have been going on in the world the last month or two. Things are starting to shift a little bit. It's a good time to really get that accountability and productivity back into your company if you're lacking it at all. So that could be a great way to get it started. And Ani, we were going to talk a little bit about fear when we came back from this break. Because you jumped in right at the end on me and talked a little bit about fear. And I love talking about fear, because fear is the stopper of a lot of things that we know better, right? So why don't you share a little bit about the fear around some of this?
Well, yeah, we were afraid of a few things at that time. One of the other things that I forgot to mention was that we also revamped our client-facing team as well, too. And so it's scary to change prices all of a sudden, right? When you maybe aren't taking the work that you want to be taking, and you get worried, hey, if I increase my prices, is that going to reduce that workflow, right? Also, when you change people, are these new people going to be better, right? But or deliver on what you need to do. And so it was a very scary time. But what we saw was that, hey, if we kept going down that same path, we were going to get the results that we were getting, and that wasn't sustainable. We were going to die, right, if we did that. And to grow, we had to make some tough choices. And so when we made those pricing changes, we sent out an email to our clients, let them know that it was coming, and let them know the circumstances, right? Let them know that lumber and, garage doors and all these things that we had to source, it was a much different time. And everybody was super receptive. And it actually drove extra work because we ended up starting to touch base with more of our clients, letting them know that, and then them reaching out to us. And it was just this amazing thing, right? Our client-facing team, man, when I think about the changes and us trimming some of the fat in the office, because you have to look at it and say, well, man, who are my culture creators? And then who are my culture killers, right? And, we made some adjustments. And these people are now running our team now. And that's what I saw through that year was this developed some of our best people. So we were scared shitless, pardon my language, but it was amazing the results that came from that. And the people that are running our departments, I know Kyle, who's not in here right now, he's actually having his baby boy, I believe, today, which is very exciting. But in our account management team, he was one of the people that, rose in the rankings. And Charlotte, our senior account manager, who's running a lot of our biggest clients or working with our biggest clients, just took it to a different level. And so, it was scary, but great.
Yeah. But I think it's really important. Like I've sat in rooms during that time with clients talking about price increases, and some of the listeners out there, you did too. And that was a high fear time, like trying to figure out the pricing model when the literally materials are changing every day. And some of them are just going up drastically every day, right? Like lumber was like really out of control for a while there. And when it's shooting up every day, you don't even know if the increase that you're deciding to do that's scaring the hell out of you to talk to clients about, you don't even know if that's enough. Right. So you're doing this stuff, not even understanding if it's going to fix anything or not, or really get you back to where you need to be.
But what's interesting about that is you're exactly right. But the good things that come from that, here was one good thing that came from that. So we started to realize on some of our large orders, because our sweet spot, our average order is about $600 to $700. Remove and replace a toilet, water heater, those sorts of things, right? But we do get larger orders as well too. On the larger orders, we changed our time frame of when we would accept, right? Because remember how I told you we were not getting jobs approved at the same rate. It was just margin erosion everywhere. So we said, hey, because of pricing changes, we can only extend this estimate for 15 days. Right. Yeah. And then the price will change. So what that did is it drove people to accept jobs sooner. Right. And it was a win. Where at first we were thinking, this is crazy because prices are changing. This is going to be tricky, but it made us put in tighter controls to have a better business.
Yeah. And that's I think the bottom line here is that here you had this issue. You really started to drive your company into the ground. You and your partner didn't use your fear to sit back and cry about it. What you guys did was use that fear to get you engaged.
Action.
Is that fair way of saying it?
Yeah. Right? Sometimes we just think about the problem and we get, we get in that thought, and it kind of, it just allows us not to move, right? The biggest key is take action. So that's what we did.
Yeah, it's paralyzing a little bit at times. So, I think that's such a valuable lesson for our listeners. And you had another thing that you shared with me right before we got on today, and I wanted you to share that with everyone because it's like when you started the business, and there are a lot of people out there that are listening that's starting companies too. And what could why don't you share your story of when you started the business?
Yeah, 100%. So I come, from, I was coming from an industry, I think I put it in my bio, where it was the knife company. And some of your listeners might know that company. Are you familiar with Cutco?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So huge knife company. They recruit college kids. And I worked with them for a number of years in the Cutco Hall of Fame. I think almost 14 years I was with them. It's actually where I met my business partner, Matt King. And he was with them for 18 years and also in the Hall of Fame and probably close to 100 million in sales he's done with that company. But we were coming from a totally different industry and came into the maintenance world because we thought we could take some of our skills in the service, recruiting, and training world and apply them to this industry. And, we did not know much about maintenance, but we were able to, onboard some great people in that world. And when we started this business, we started in a house. So I actually moved from Miami over here with my then girlfriend, who was also our accountant. She was an accountant by trade, and we lived in a 2-story house. I was on the top floor, lived on the top floor, and our office was on the bottom floor, pretty much in the kitchen and the living room. And that was how we started the business. We got a conditional use permit to be able to start a business in the house. We ended up having 15 people come to that office, or that house, I should say, block traffic within that first year. Had no idea how successful it was going to be. Everybody thought we were throwing.
I bet you your neighbors loved you.
No, the HOA, actually, it's funny. We work with HOAs now, but the HOA president was all over us. Like, what are you guys doing? It feels like you have a party every morning and everybody leaves at 6 o'clock, 5 or 6 o'clock. There's no cars there anymore. And so eventually we got moved into an office, and by the end of our first 9 months, and it's been great ever since. Challenging, but great.
Yeah, but talk about the very first client you had, the REIT.
Yeah, the very first client that we had when we started the business, it was one of the biggest REITs in the space. They're huge in the space, publicly traded company, multi-billion. But we were doing about $1.5 million. So that first year we did right at about 3.7 mil. About $1.5 million of that was with this client. We were taking hundreds of work orders with them. We thought things were going great. They wanted us to do more work, more trades. So we started doing that: windows, roofing, things that we were not disciplined in and not how we started the business. We just, again, started taking on too much, and we learned that lesson very early on. We ended up losing that client because we had a couple jobs that did not go the right way, and we did not handle them the right way as new leaders and owners in the industry. And we learned that those situations are crucial. We still have yet to get that client back, but what it did force us to do is it forced us to get other clients and move into working with property management groups, so a whole new sector of business, and diversified our portfolio. So you don't want to just have all your eggs in one basket or with one client. We realized having 40 to 50% of our business one client was not good. So that next year when we lost them, we went into recruiting mode, recruited clients, and created the business that we have today.
Yeah, this is such an important problem you're covering right now. I think it challenges all of us when we start a business. I think when you saw me speak, I talk a little bit about that. When we start our business, all we're thinking about is selling, right? I got to get the next deal. I got to get the next deal. I got to get the next deal. In the quest for I got to get the next deal, what you basically just said to me is we took on work we weren't qualified at that time to do, right? You may be qualified now to do it, but you weren't qualified at that time. And you took this work on without fully getting training systems in place, understanding exactly the knowledge you needed to have to handle the issues that were coming up and the client wanted you to take on. And so you took these things on at a heavy cost to yourself, losing half of your revenue after the first year. That must have been scary.
Super scary. And we learned a lesson. You can't say yes to everything. You can't say yes to everything. Even though the sales sound good and even though the clients really need it, you have to make sure that you can deliver, because you can do 95% of the things right. But if you do that 5% wrong, and that's the 5% that they're focused on or that they're seeing most of, right, that can ruin the other 95%. And that's what happened. We also went into markets that we were not ready to go into because we just thought, oh, growth, let's go into Charleston. And we weren't ready for that yet.
Yeah. You're talking about Charleston, South Carolina, because you're all the way up into North Carolina, aren't you? all the
Yeah,
way
and we're
from
in Charleston
Florida, all the
now.
way.
We're in Charleston
Uh-huh.
now, but we weren't ready for it back then. Just like you mentioned, it wasn't
That
done
makes
the right way, and we weren't able to execute. And because we were doing bad in that one market, we have clients that serve us in all of our markets. But if you're doing bad in that one market, that gets to the other maintenance coordinators in the other markets, and it's not a good look.
Right, right. And especially when they're that large and they're providing you half of your work, they had to be a pretty good customer all the way around. And losing that is not a good face for you in the market. That's what you're
Yeah.
saying. So it sounds like you were basically trying to give your client all their wants, not really thinking about your ability to give them some of the wants that they had.
Mm-hmm. Or doing
Okay.
it in a thoughtful way, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
said they needed this. We said, okay, we could figure it out, right? And in a couple of instances, we didn't. And then we didn't handle the situations the way that we would now, and we've learned that as well. When you're dealing with, and for people listening, when you have clients that are maybe giving you hundreds or even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in business, you have to think about what you need to be more comfortable giving in some cases to make them feel okay. And now knowing that, we would have eaten those jobs. We would have said, hey, no problem. These are on us and we're going to go knock them out, because there was so much else that was there. But at that time we were a new business and things were very tight financially. And we didn't think, again, things are different.
Yeah. Well, hey, Ani, I appreciate your time on the show today. You gave us a lot of great insight. I'm sure the audience will find your time very valuable here. Do you have any closing words for anybody or anything?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, David. I've had a blast sharing, and closing thoughts. I love listening to you. I'm excited about listening more to the show. And my thought is, hey, always or continue to learn. That I think is what has gotten myself, my business partner, to where we're at. Be humble, continue to learn, continue to grow. That's why I never miss those Vistage workshops. No matter if there's 2 or 4 or 10 people there, I'm going to be there.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And this is the Strategy Sherpa Show. We'll be right back after this message. And thank you, Ani, for joining us. I'll just summarize the show in the next section. So have a great day, Ani. And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, David. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey, everybody, this is David Chavez. This is Strategy Sherpa Show. Hey, I just wanted to wind up the show. I'm going to try to wind it up on my own at the very end, because I've gotten some feedback from people that, it'd be good to summarize everything that we hear. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit and summarize a little bit about what you heard. So Ani was such a great guest because as you could hear, his humility level was just amazing. They've done very well in their company. His company has really, really grown, him and Matt's company, I should say, because the both of them really have done an amazing job growing it. And the mistakes are part of their learning. And some of the mistakes in Ani's case even were that he expanded his company and really leveraged those mistakes to take it to some next level even. So I just thought that was fascinating. And I thought it was really interesting how he talked about it. And I just wanted to summarize a few of the things. First of all, they got a little sloppy with their work. And when we say sloppy, I don't mean like they were just like coming to work and not taking a shower and things like that. It's just basically they got complacent. This happens in so many companies as we're scaling and growing. I talk to business leaders sometimes when I've never met them before, and they always have their defense up like, hey, I don't want to talk to you because I don't want you selling me anything. And I'm talking to them a little bit about their company. And one of the words they use with me quite often is, we're doing fine. Well, what does fine mean? In Jim Collins' Good to Great book, the enemy of great is good. So what's the enemy of fine? I don't know. We have to think about these things. I'm doing fine. That means that I probably have issues going on I'm not really seeing inside of my company. And Ani really talked about that. He said they got sloppy with the work, but once they started to understand what was going on, what did they do? They went back to the fundamentals, and he talked about that. They went back to their processes. They went back to their training guides. They went back to the things that really made the company work correctly to begin with. And I just really admired how he's talked about that and how he shared it with us, what he actually did. I know from talking to him a little bit, they actually looked at their whole training program, rewrote most of their processes in the company. These are month-long activities. So what they did is they suffered through the lost period to start to get some of these things back in line. And him and Matt's communication became really critical during that time. He said, my partner and I, thank goodness I had the partner I had. And when he said that, I was sitting there going, that's quite the statement, because a partner in business is like a marriage. You have the same conflicts that go on. And whenever there's money problems, those conflicts get more challenging, right? And so him and his partner are dealing with these challenges of money, and they're losing money, but they kept such a positive attitude and used the fear to overcome some of these big challenges that they had. Instead of withdrawing from the fear and going, oh no, the world is ending, they said, hey, we made some mistakes. Let's get back into it and let's do what we know what we need to do. We've fallen off the bike and we need to get back on the bike and learn how to ride again. Rising prices, raising the prices. You heard about his fear around that. I actually was sitting in several rooms during this time of COVID and trying to figure out about raising prices. I had another client, they were raising prices 25% every 6 months. And they still kept on getting customers, because what were they doing at the same time? They were cleaning up their operations, making it more efficient. Customers could trust them to deliver the services that they were delivering. And so Ani and his team and Matt's team, they were able to raise prices because they were fixing the things that mattered to the customer. The customer doesn't care about them taking a vacation, doesn't care about them coming in 2 days a week. They just want the service delivered correctly. And that's what he was really saying. And I really loved how he talked about that. And having sat in those rooms and listened to executive teams talk about raising prices in a time when they're not doing well is a very challenging conversation. You can get lost in the things you believe to be true. And then getting into some of the things that they weren't disciplined in, like when they first started the company, was really important. They took on too much from one client. They were trying to satisfy the client's wants when they did not have the ability to satisfy the want, and it ended up costing them the whole client. When I was talking to Ani about this beforehand, they were doing 95% of the stuff correct for that client, but the 5% is what stuck with them. That's horrible. He lost a client because he was making a mistake on 5% of the work. And sometimes that's all it takes. This client was half of his revenue. Really had to change the way they were thinking about their business and not making the mistake of taking on more than they can really handle. So I really appreciated this. And this is the type of stuff we help clients with. Now, Ani was talking a little bit about this stuff. Now he's trying to get to the next level, because he's at a certain level now. He's trying to get to the next level and break through the next level of strategic challenges that are coming up for him. And that's what we really do here at Assured Strategy, is we help people develop an approach to thinking about the business so they're not having to be in the day-to-day doing of the company. And what does that mean? How to manage the company and scale it why through leading instead of being involved in every little activity. And this is what we're going to do November the 9th in Phoenix, Arizona. with our accountability workshop. And this Thursday, Kane has a workshop from 1 to 2 Central Time talking about accountability, getting ready for her speech in November. And look, we would love for you to join us, get a little bit more efficient on some of these things, and use all of Ani's success that he has today from some of the failures he had from yesterday and leverage those. This is Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez. I really appreciate you being here, and we look forward to having you back at the next show. And we have some exciting guests coming up. Thank you. And this is Strategy Sherpa Show. Take care.